Eagle, the linear tactical series. Written by Janie Crouch. Narrated by Tom Campbell. Chapter 1. Today was the day. Charlotte Devereux just needed this one thing to go right. She rested her head against her hands on the steering wheel. Was it so much to ask, after everything that had happened, to catch a break? She dragged her head up and peeked out her windshield. Not that she'd thought she'd find it here in Oak Creek, the town she'd fallen in love with when she'd moved here at 14 years old. At the time, she'd planned to live here the rest of her life, get married, and raise half a dozen kids. She'd had it all worked out, right down to the father of those 6 kids. But sometimes real life got in the way of your inner 14-year-old's plans. And once she'd left Oak Creek with such fanfare 8 years ago, she'd never thought she would be back, especially under these circumstances. But it was fitting that this town, which had once held so much promise and heartbreak for her, would be the place that would allow her to start again. This was the job she wanted, the one she had worked so hard for and discovered she had such a natural talent and passion for, the one that had been snatched away from her at every opportunity. But not today. Today she had circumvented the powers that be, keeping her from her dream, by discovering a way around them. Maybe it wasn't the prettiest way possible, or the cleverest, but she'd done it. And this was just the beginning. She would prove herself here, and then slowly things would build. She straightened, ignoring the exhaustion that pulled at her. She'd worked a shift last night at her other job until after 3 o'clock in the morning, and then had been unable to sleep. She wouldn't deceive herself into thinking that, after today, she could give that other job up. Not yet. But it would build, though slowly. Things didn't change fast, but God knew she'd become patient. When you didn't have any other choice, it was all you could be. Otherwise, you just went batshit crazy. She'd been there, too. But not today. Today was going to be good. She opened the door and got out, grabbing the blazer she'd paid to have pressed with money she couldn't spare. But looking professional, that difficult-to-obtain mix of friendly and capable, was more important than anything else she could have used it for. Like food. There wasn't a stitch of designer anything on her body, but hell, it had been so long since she'd worn a name other than Walmart's faded glory that it no longer even fazed her. She had real battles to fight, which meant she had no time for the cosmetic ones. Taking a deep breath, she turned and faced the Frontier Diner. She'd spent so many hours hanging out here during high school, her only cares those of any privileged happy girl her age. Gossip, friends, boys. Finn Bollinger in particular. God, how she wished Finn was her biggest concern now. She pushed the thought of him from her mind because that would derail her faster than her exhaustion or nervousness. Ethan. Ethan was the name of the person she was to concentrate on today. She grabbed her tote bag from the back seat, wincing at everything else stuffed in her car. But that didn't matter either right now. Today would be the start, one step at a time. She smoothed non-existent wrinkles from her blazer, locked her car, and turned toward the Frontier. It was time. Opening the door, she stepped inside. 8 years later, and it was all still the same. The smell of pies, the low murmur of voices, the burble of coffee brewing behind the counter. She closed her eyes just for a moment to take it all in. God, this was home. These smells, these sights, these sounds. Her mind associated this with home even more than the 8-bedroom mansion she lived in on the outskirts of town. This had been where her heart desired to be, not because of the building, but who'd always been by her side. She opened her eyes, looking around once more. She'd left of her own accord. She couldn't deny that, nor that she'd been the one to walk away from everything, everyone, here. And she'd do it again, given the same circumstances. But the price, it had been so high, so much higher than she'd expected, and she was still paying it. Today she had to keep her soul from withering any further. Hopefully someday she would trace her new start all back to now. She looked around for her prospective client. All she knew about him and the family she'd be working with was that his name was Ethan. His last would be withheld until the parents approved her as a tutor, and that he was almost 8 years old. He had some neurological...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?